Do I have to turn a freaking light on what's going on here? Watch this video.
As soon as Israel started releasing all these hostages, I'm like, why do you have so many children hostages to release? So quick Google search got me to, of course, another international human rights organization report. Stripped, beaten, and blindfolded. New research reveals ongoing violence and abuse of Palestinian children. Save the Children presents evidence today to the Human Rights Council on Palestinian children in detention. It is estimated there are between 500 and 1,000 children held in Israeli military detention each year. Please let that number sink in. 42% of the children were injured, including gunshot wounds and broken bones, and 65% of the children were arrested during the night, mostly between midnight and dawn. Half of the arrests took place in a children's home. Majority of the children experienced appalling levels of physical and emotional abuse, including being beaten. 86% of them. Being threatened with harm, 70% of them, hit with sticks or guns, which is 60%. Some children reported violence and abuse of a sexual nature, including being hit or touched on the genitals, and 69% reported being strip searched. Children. 60% of the children experienced solitary confinement with length of time varying from 1 day to as long as 48 days. Let me tell you something as a criminal defense attorney. Solitary confinement is inhumane.
نتنياهو يسكن بيتاً مسروقاً نهب من عائلة كنعان الفلسطينية. هذا ما كشفه مقال لكاتب إسرائيلي في صحيفة يديعوت. فيلا من طابقين في حي القطمون بالقدس كانت ملكاً للطبيب الفلسطيني توفيق كنعان. اضطر لمغادرتها وعائلته بعد النكبة عام 1948 إثر قصف إسرائيلي تعرضت له. سرقت الفيلا على مرأى أصحابها. أعطيت في عام 1949 لعائلة نتنياهو القادمة إلى القدس من أمريكا. ورث نتنياهو وأخوه البيت عن أبويهما. باع الأخ حصته بنحو $1,300,000 لتنتقل ملكية البيت إلى نتنياهو. هل يعيد نتنياهو البيت إلى أهله؟
I don't think we can be seeing a more extreme example of a war machine in operation than what it is we're seeing and hearing from Gaza. I just want to say that Israel is the 15th largest military spender in the world, and it's spending $24 billion a year on its military, and you're seeing this let rip on a population that really cannot defend themselves. The jets, the tanks, the bombs, the missiles, all of these things that we are seeing raining down on people, they are all fossil fuel dependent. There is an absolute correlation between military spending and the emissions that come from that hardware. And we are going in the wrong direction.
And when it comes to genocide, there isn't a side. There's only the 16,000 and counting lives that have been lost without any justification. And it's the same thing with the climate crisis. There is no justification for the millions of lives that have already been lost and impacted simply because of the greed of polluters and global north governments who have enabled this crisis to happen. So these systemic injustices, they don't happen in a vacuum, and they also have the same source. That also means they have the same solutions. And there is, no climate justice without human rights. And there's also no climate justice on occupied land. So everything that we're seeing here is so relevant to everything that's playing out in Gaza and in other places where genocide is happening around the world.
Israel loves it that Nazi Sharon has invaded the West Bank. They're slaughtering innocent people. And I'm sick of worshiping Israel. Did you know back in the 1960s they bombed the USS Liberty knowing it was one of our ships because it caught the radio chatter of them killing thousands of Palestinian children during that invasion, and they torpedoed it as they begged for hours on the radio, and LBJ sat there in 63 and let them do it? That's in this Baltimore Sun story. I don't support the Palestinians either. They're all hyped up and psychotic. But Israel's going to get us nuked, always backing them up like this. Israel calls the Palestinians goyim or cattle or dogs or subhuman. They keep them on concentration camps. I got video of them taking Palestinian women's tomatoes they grow and breaking their water containers and stealing. That's why you have this crap. And our children are going to die. We're going to get nuked because of this. Iran's got the nukes now. Syria. We're going to have nuclear war because Israel likes to go around bombing everybody.
Do you know where was the largest LGBT pride march in the Middle East? It was in Tel Aviv. More than 150,000 people. And here is a few pictures of one of the main spokesperson for the Zionist military. Now those Zionists are not just invading a piece of land or killing innocent people. They are at the center of the world and they want to spread everything that goes against Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Starting from disbelieving in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and that's the top sin. Then killing innocent people. Then controlling most of the banks and spreading usury, adultery, and enforcing sodomy. And they control most of the media channels in order to manipulate most of the minds. And they are backed up by most of the Western countries. Now this is a serious major threat to the Muslims. And if you cannot see that, most probably you're busy and running after this materialistic life. And trust me, you cannot beat them just by having an army. The only way to face such a threat is to go back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Umar radiallahu anhu said that Islam has made us glorious, and without it we will live a life of humiliation. Brothers and sisters, we need to go back to our religion. It's all that we have in order to live our lives with glory and to become a shield to protect us from this evil.
Something you should know. الأمريكيين رفعوا سقف المقاطعة إلى أكبر حد. فهم حاليا قاعدين يخططوا انهم يسحبوا اموالهم من البنوك كلهم في نهار واحد، مش هكا يهززوا الاقتصاد متاع البلاد، وبالتالي اثروا على قرار الدولة في تمويل الحرب. ففي الظروف اللي قاعدة تصير حاليا الناس الكل قاعدين يحاولوا ياخذوا اي موقف باش يوقفوا الابادة اللي قاعدة تصير، حتى ولو كان على حساب مصالحهم الشخصية. فالموضوع ابدا ما هوش جازوزة ولا تابلت شوكولاتة ولا قهوة ولا برجر.
يمكن كلكم شفتوا المنشورات اللي اليهود برموها على اهل الضفة، منشورات بتطلب منهم انهم يهربوا على الأردن، ولكن اللي مش الكل شافه هو الإعلانات الممولة عند عمو مارك واللي ما بتظهر إلا بالضفة والأردن، واللي كمان بتطلب من أهل الضفة إنهم يتركوا أرضهم وبيوتهم ويهربوا، وإلا راح يكون مصيرهم القصف زي أهل غزة. إسرائيل قاعدة بتسوق للعالم إنهم انتصروا بغزة، والآن بلش الصوت يعلى بالحكي عن الضفة. قبل يومين الحكومة الإسرائيلية وافقت على تنظيم مظاهرة لمتطرفين في القدس بيطالبوا بإنهاء الوصاية الهاشمية على المقدسات، وما وقفت على هيك. الحكي بالصحف ومواقع اليمين الإسرائيلي إنه النظام بالأردن واقف عائق بتنفيذ هذا المخطط، لهيك الحل هو إثارة الفتنة في الأردن وإسقاط النظام فيه. ليش؟ مشان يسيطر على الحكم عصابة يكون بينهم وبين إسرائيل تنسيق أمني. وإذا حسست على قرعتك لما حكيت تنسيق أمني قصدي عنك. حاب أحكي لنتنياهو ولشبه الدولة اللي عاملينها وماخدين راحتكم كثير بالحكي فيها إنه هذا الحكي عبارة عن أحلام وأوهام. بالأردن من أصغر واحد فينا لأكبر واحد فينا فاهمينكم، وموضوع الفتنة شيلوه من بالكم، لأنه شباب أهل الأردن انتوا أغبى من إنكم تضحكوا عليهم. وإذا انتوا فيكم ريحة البشر وقفوا قصف الأطفال وواجهوا الرجال على الأرض وورجونا فيديوهات لانتصاراتكم زي الفيديوهات اللي بيكون فيها مثلثات لون أحمر، لأنه لغاية الآن إحنا ما شفنا إلا شوية معاتيه عاملين حرب على رضع وحيط. يلا بنتظر تعليقات ضبابكم الإلكتروني.
What? It's banned. Do you know this creature? He is Yair Netanyahu, the son of Benjamin Netanyahu. Take a look. It's his leaked DNA test. Holds the number RM198. A little research, and his origins are 36% Polish, 34 Russian, 26 German, 4 from other European countries. It's clear now why DNA is banned in the Israeli occupation. Because there is no Israel. They are just occupiers, a bunch of slaughterers who stole the land of Olive. The moronic son once said, "There is no P in Arabic, so Palestine do not exist." There is no J in Hebrew, so
عمرك فقدت حد عزيز عليك او خسرت بيتك او مريت بمصيبة كبيرة قوي؟ طب ما اتضايقتش لما لقيت الحياة بتمشي عادي وكل واحد في حاله، محدش حتى وقف قالك انا في ظهرك؟ بالعكس كانوا بيتجاهلوا الموضوع وكأن مفيش حاجة حصلت. ما بالك لو في خلال كام شهر خسرت بيتك ووظيفتك، مش معاك اكل ولا شرب ولا مسكن، اهلك في خطر الموت كل دقيقة، وبناتك بيغتصبوا قدام عينيك ومحدش بيتكلم. الاحساس اللي انت حسيته دلوقتي ما يجيش 1 على 100 من احساس اهلنا في السودان. يوم 15 ابريل السنة دي بدأت عندهم حرب بين الجيش السوداني وميليشيات مسلحة، ودول شوية مواطنين معاهم اسلحة بيستعملوا اسلوب حرب العصابات ومالهمش اي علاقة بالدولة. لكن الميليشيات اللي في السودان مش شوية مواطنين، دول حوالي 120 ألف مقاتل. الحرب الأهلية دي اتدمرت فيها المطارات والطائرات، اتحرقت الوزارات والمحاكم والمصانع، واتقصفت المستشفيات والبيوت، واتقطعت المية والكهرباء والأكل والدواء. مات أكتر من 12 ألف مواطن، ونزح أكتر من 6.5 مليون، يعني ما عندهمش مكان يعيشوا فيه. 24 مليون مواطن محتاجين مساعدات إنسانية، يعني أكل، مية نظيفة، مكان يعيشوا فيه، مساعدات طبية وغيرها. 80% من المستشفيات توقفت عن العمل، وده في حالة وجود 7000 شخص مريض بالكوليرا. ده مرض معدي بيعمل جفاف شديد للإنسان وبيؤدي للوفاة. ولو عايز تعرف حجم الاغتصاب هناك وصل لقد إيه، ادخل على تويتر واكتب هاشتاج احموا النساء من الاغتصاب وشوف بنفسك. كل ده واحنا ما نعرفش. كل ده بيحصل ومحدش بيتكلم عن أهلنا في السودان. أرجوكم ما توقفوش كلام عن أي إنسان بيتعرض للإبادة، عن أي إنسان بيتظلم. يمكن تكون حياتنا ماشية عادي، لكن ربنا بيعمل كده عشان يدينا الفرصة إننا نتكلم ونعرف الناس عنهم.
Please maintain good manners. Not everyone knows where they get ideas like these. It's one of the grotesque crimes committed by the occupation forces against the Palestinian people. Many people might not know this. Those who do not sympathize do not understand what they do to the Palestinians in terms of land theft, torture, and even after they become martyrs, they detain the bodies in the cemeteries of stolen land. Known as the Numbers cemeteries, the occupation army stores the bodies of Palestinian martyrs in fridges or in burials under the sea. There are metal signs on them with numbers. That's why they were identified as the cemeteries of numbers. And each number has a special file. The Israeli security forces, which have information about its owner, constantly retain it. These cemeteries are typically enclosed military zones owned by the Ministry of Defense. They are off limits for disturbances or photography. No one else allows anyone to enter. Not even the families of the martyrs can identify or distinguish their children's graves. And among the cemeteries that were declared are the cemeteries with numbers adjacent to Benat Yakun Bridge and the Rividini Cemetery in the Jordan Rift Valley, surrounded by a wall with an iron gate up to the month arrives, and Chehita Cemetery in the village of Wazi al-Hammam, which is shallow so the bodies appear significantly from it, exposing the bodies of dogs, animals, and even for rains and floods. The occupation forces use the bodies of the martyrs detained with them for the purpose of blackmail and occupation. As usual, I mean. The digital groceries matter began in 1948 and the siege is still going on.
لقيت لما خشوا على العمارة بزعقوا هم إلهم فجروا البواب وخشوا فجروا البواب اللي تحتينا احنا على السادس ساكنين. قلنا رحنا فتحنا الباب وضوينا الضوء بالعادة ما نضوهوش وخش من هان بنقول له يا عمي مدنيين وشافنا نسوين ورجال وشباب وقت اللي يقنعوا. أول واحد لطشوه جوز أختي أبو حمدي طخوه وهو بقول له مدنيين وشايفه ضوء يعني ضاء عالي. بعدين جمعوا الرجال
خشوا علينا في العمارة وطلعوا بيت بيت يخشوا ويطخوا فيها ويعربدوا. نزلوا بنتي غصب عنها وابنها طلعوا مش عارفينها وين، واخذوا جوزي وجوز بنتي واولادي الشباب. هذا في الدور الاول، ضلهم يطلعوا كل دور بدوره. اخذوا الجيران لمونا احنا، كل الستات لمونا احنا، حطونا في اوضه واخذوا الرجال كلهم. اول ما فاتوا عندي على السادس نزلوا طخوا نسيبي وابنه على المطرح في نفس الشقه. اعدام.
ايش عملوا فيه؟
بعد ما وقفونا 3 قذائف رموا على راسنا ورصاص قليه مكفهم مش هيك. اجوا عنا على الصالون طخونا طخ. انا في ايدي رصاصه، بنتي في راسها رصاصه، ابني بطل يشوف، بنتي الصغيره استشهدت، جوزي قاعد اموت، كل بناتي اصابات، رجل بنتي كلها مفتوحه، فيش لحم، ايدها مكسوره، بنتي كل جسمها شظايا. انا من امبارح الساعه 5 وانا بنزف كل جسمي.
Missiles hitting their home is all what Sham remembers from the night her entire building was bombed. The 6-year-old is the only survivor from her family. She recalls the last night in her mother's arms.
We were asleep, me, my mum and my sister, and my dad by the balcony. When the first rocket hit, my sister screamed and I held my mum tight. Then all the building fell. They pulled me out of the rubble, the first one. My mum, my dad, and my sister are dead. I want to go to them.
Sham and her family were living in Nusayrat refugee camp, which is located in the so-called safe area Israel ordered people to move to in the south. Now, Sham is in hospital with severe third-degree burns in over 60%.
Tonight involving a middle school teacher accused of making terroristic threats.
Benjamin Reese is accused of threatening to kill and behead a student after the student asked about an Israeli flag in Reese's classroom.
Now, according to the report, it happened around 3:30 on Thursday, December 7th. 3 students told investigators they were walking down the 7th grade hallway after school. That's when one student noticed an Israeli flag in Reese's classroom and stopped to ask him about it. Now, the report says she asked why Reese had it up. He told her he has family in Israel. That's when the report says the student told Reese she found it offensive. She told investigators Reese got angry and started yelling at her. The student left his room, but the report says Reese followed her down the hallway, continuing to yell. Now, we don't know exactly what Reese allegedly said directly to that student, but the report says she and her 2 friends couldn't hear most of what was said. Other teachers and students say they heard him loudly making threats while walking back to his classroom, though, that included profanity and threats to cut her head off and kill her in the parking lot. I'll have more of those details tonight at 11. Back to you.
Thank you, Anthony. Reese is charged with terroristic threats and cruelty to children in the 3rd degree. A judge granted him a total
Missiles hitting their home is all what Sham remembers from the night her entire building was bombed. The 6-year-old is the only survivor from her family. She recalls the last night in her mother's arms.
We were asleep, me, my mum and my sister, and my dad by the balcony. When the first rocket hit, my sister screamed and I held my mum tight. Then all the building fell. They pulled me out of the rubble, the first one. My mum, my dad, and my sister are dead. I want to go to them.
Sham and her family were living in Nusayrat refugee camp, which is located in the so-called safe area Israel ordered people to move to in the south. Now, Sham is in hospital with severe 3rd-degree burns in over 60% of her body. And she says she can't feel her toes. But the pain she feels from the loss of her parents
Tom,
is much
they're not
greater.
trying to steal the land of Gaza. They're just trying to defeat Hamas. All right, well then explain what the fuck this is about. Because this sure looks like an Israeli business Instagram account that's been set up to plan the development of illegal Israeli settlements in fucking Gaza. What the fuck? Now at pre-sale prices. They're already selling the fucking things. And this is their website here. They're selling all these different fucking models of houses in fucking Gaza. But tell me again how it's not an ethnic cleansing. How it's not genocide. How they're not trying to steal the fucking land. You fucking moron.
He's a Palestinian singer from Gaza, and you might recognize one of his songs. I've gotten many comments in the past month asking me, what does this song mean and why is everybody using it? And the song has everything to do with being a proud Palestinian. The song titled Dammi Falastini literally means my blood is Palestinian, and you wouldn't believe it, but Israelis actually signed a petition saying that the song was anti-Semitic. But before we get to that, let's start with his journey. Obviously, everybody knows the popular show American Idol, and back in 2011, there was an Arab idol in the Middle East. Mohammed Assaf at the time was a wedding singer, and when there was news that there was going to be an audition in Egypt for season 2, he knew he had to be there. But as you might know by now, leaving Gaza is almost near impossible, and it took him 2 days at the border just to cross into Egypt because of complications. And because of that, by the time he got to the hotel in Egypt to audition, the doors were already closed and they were not accepting any more contestants. But never underestimate a Palestinian's determination, because this man not only climbed the wall to get into the hotel, but he also snuck past security, and when he went inside, he realized he couldn't get a number to audition. So he sat down where other contestants were waiting for their turn and just started singing, and another Palestinian man heard him and gave him his number and said, I know I couldn't make it to the finals, but I know I'll see you there. And when it was his turn to audition, not only were the judges blown away, but they compared him to somebody that is such a big deal in the Arab world. And that would be Egyptian singer Abd al-Halim Hafiz, who's kind of like our Frank Sinatra, if you will. There is no singer that has ever been bigger in the Arab world, and it was even to the point where Jay-Z used his instrumentals for the song Big Pimpin'. Not only was my mother absolutely obsessed with him and glued to the TV every time he would come on, but the Arab world was no different. This man went on to win Arab Idol by singing songs that had to do with the history of Palestinians, like the Nakba and the Intifada. And when he won, he proudly waved that Palestinian flag. Oh, and Palestinians in Gaza could not be more happy than to celebrate his win. Because Mohammed not only represented hope for the Palestinian people, but he showed them that their dreams really could come true. After winning Arab Idol in 2013, Mohammed continued to put out music empowering the Palestinian people, and he released his song Dammi Falastini in 2015. Palestinians from Gaza are not allowed to go to the West Bank, but because he worked with UNRWA, it allowed him to secure an entry. But because Mohammed has been very vocal on social media about resisting the Israeli occupation, they blocked him from entering the West Bank. But it didn't stop there, because they also prevented him from entering Gaza. At the time, he put out a statement saying, "This is nothing but a continuation of the policies of oppression and curbing the freedoms suffered by my people, to whom I belong in the heart, entity, and soul. Nothing will deter me from loving my country and singing about it in all forums with my heart. Oh, my country." And it didn't stop there, because Israelis started a petition to have his song Dammi Falastini removed from Spotify, and it was removed. It wasn't just Spotify, it was also Apple and other streaming services, but after backlash, Spotify relisted it. In a statement, Spotify Arabia said the removal of some of Mohammed Assaf's content was not determined by Spotify, but rather by the distributor. We anticipate its return in the near future and apologize for any inconvenience caused. However, Mohammed responded saying he got a letter from Spotify saying that his song was promoting anti-Semitism. Mohammed said, "I checked my official page on the Spotify and Apple Music platforms and was surprised that the song Dammi Falastini was deleted on the pretext that the song incites the Zionist enemy, which makes me more honored that my songs express the Palestinian people's resistance to the occupation. This accusation increases my honor and belonging to my homeland. Even if they delete this song, it is present in the memory and conscience of every Palestinian and every honorable free man who defends the right of the Palestinian people to obtain their freedom and independence." Fast forward to today, and his words couldn't be more true. And not only does his song live in every Palestinian, but it lives in every single human being that is fighting for the right of Palestinians to be free.
I think that is the most disheartening thing. I think I thought, at least even 20 years ago when I started to work internationally, that there was this, in my head, some weird idea of good guys, some idea of those, whether it be certain countries or certain peoples. Maybe it was this holdover from World War II and this thought that this was so that the lines were clearer and that there was going to be these human rights goals laid out and that there would be things stood up for, and that if these things weren't done, there would be pushback. And and I really thought that's what it was. I even thought that's what the United Nations was. I thought, okay, there's some lines in the sand. There's some understanding, and we're going to grow and fight for improvements in these areas. And to watch and understand more and more how it's just simply, that's not what it is. That's not the world. The world is not, these are human rights. It is, these are human rights sometimes for these people, maybe sometimes for these people, never for these people. It's justice for these people, but not these people. Accountability for this crime, but not that crime if there's business interest. And this is truly the ugly state of so much of the world that we are just becoming
Jewish
more and
person
more
that doesn't
aware
want to
of.
live in Palestine can take their bags and go somewhere else. They are in Palestine. The fact that they changed the name in 1948 didn't make it stop being Palestine. It still is Palestine. It was Palestine going back for thousands of years. And so if anybody is uncomfortable living with an Arab majority, what the hell are they doing coming to colonize an Arab country?
Yeah.
I mean, that's just the way it is. They don't like it. They can go somewhere else. The reality is, this, Kim, look, there's no choice. The choice is not one state, two state, because there is no scenario on earth that the state of Israel, the Zionist entity, which is founded on a racist, supremacist ideology, which is Zionism, which has been an apartheid state from day one. It was designed as an apartheid state, and the Amnesty International report from last year demonstrates with data very clearly. Of course, I knew it, many of us knew it, a long time ago, but, very clear that it was an apartheid state from the get-go. There is no scenario that state is going to allow a Palestinian entity for
discovered natural gas off the coast of Gaza. The natural gas is spread over 1.4 trillion cubic feet.
Many months later,
geologists have confirmed that the West Bank is rich in high-quality oil and water supplies, while Gaza is rich in natural gas. The estimated cost of the occupation related to oil and natural gas is valued at $500 billion. Till now, Israel has successfully occupied and controlled water and oil resources. Currently, there are plans to develop Gaza's maritime gas field, as announced by Netanyahu in June 2023. Soon after declaring war against Hamas in October, Israel granted licenses to 6 companies for the development of the Gaza's gas field. Clearly, their aim is to become a net exporter of natural gas. However, the Palestinian people are seen as problematic to the proposed agenda, so Israel wants to take control over Gaza Strip in the name of self-defense against terrorism and utilize Gaza's marine gas field, similar to what was done during the 2014 war. Some countries are supporting this genocide because they are major shareholders of the 6 involved companies, either directly or indirectly through relatives. The USA and the UK support Israel also because of companies like Boeing and British Aerospace, which provide arms.
Hey everyone, this is a call to all filmmakers, artists, actors, writers. This is the time to tell our stories. This is the time. It's really quite insidious, the types of projects that are currently being circulated, and you don't need to be a genius to figure out the type of Hollywood and studio TV shows and movies that are going to be greenlit right now. We can only imagine what voices they're going to amplify, what types of people they're going to vilify. And none of this diversity and inclusion stuff that they were trying to sell to us or sell to audiences, none of that stuff is going to matter anymore. We're seeing people getting commissioned for terrorist stuff already. They don't actually care if you're Arab or not. They don't care if you're Pakistani, if you're Desi, if you're Iranian, they don't care. They don't know, they don't care. So this is it. Write the story you wanted to write, make the movie you wanted to make. This is the time to do it, because we know that it's going to take, a few months or a few years to make movies, right, or TV shows. And so in a year or two, we're just going to see this influx of TV shows and movies that are going to be harmful, that are going to be
We went from Israel will never kill a journalist. You think we're barbarians or something? To Israel's killed over 80 journalists. In fact, they're doing this in targeted strikes. They admit this, even targeting the families of journalists in targeted strikes, but it was justified. We had to do it. We went from Israel will never take civilian hostages, because obviously that's a war crime, to Israel this week now taking hundreds of civilian hostages, stripping them naked, making them sit out in the freezing cold on the beaches of Gaza for hours on end, only to let some of them return home. But oh wait, we looted their homes and we burned some of them down. But it was justified. We went from Israel would never ever kill our own Israeli hostages that are being held in Gaza, right? There's these ridiculous
People don't understand that there was a Holocaust in America. When you displace a people, when you try to assimilate them, and you systematically genocide them for hundreds of years, that's a Holocaust. The government, they relocated them, and then they tried to assimilate them. And then when they realized, oh, well, actually, we don't want these dirty Indians to be assimilated with us, so we're just gonna deprive them of food and water and take away their way of life, and, hopefully they just die out. And it's still happening today. No one really wants to talk.
I was in pajamas, and my clothes tried to swipe off my body, and it was one of the most frightening moments, because my thoughts were, even if they didn't have that intention, now they might have, and I'm half naked, so...
You're worried about rape?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was worried to get raped.
Yeah, of course.
And
Why are there no women's hair salons in Palestine, or at least very few that you can see? That's a question the late great academic and activist David Graeber asked himself upon visiting the West Bank in 2015. Often the women are blonde, and a surprising number of Palestinians in Nablus are in fact blonde, even children, but the shops are absent. During the 80s, Israeli intelligence agents began taking advantage of their existence to spike the sweet tea, which was served in the salons, with knockout drugs, and take nude pictures of women so as to blackmail their husbands into turning collaborator or informant. So now women's salons exist, but they're not visible from the street, and women no longer take tea from strangers. Your first reaction upon hearing this might be the same one that Graeber had, and that I had myself, to be honest. Is this really true? Well, the
Jewish person that doesn't want to live in Palestine can take their bags and go somewhere else. They are in Palestine. The fact that they changed the name in 1948 didn't make it stop being Palestine. It still is Palestine. It was Palestine going back for thousands of years. And so if anybody is uncomfortable living with an Arab majority, what the hell are they doing coming to colonize an Arab country?
Yeah.
You know, I mean, that's just the way it is. They don't like it. They can go somewhere else. The reality is, this, Kim, look, there's no choice. The choice is not one state, two state, because there is no scenario on earth that the state of Israel, this Zionist entity, which is founded on a racist, supremacist ideology, which is Zionism, which has been an apartheid state from day one. It was designed as an apartheid state, and the Amnesty International report from last year demonstrates with data very clearly. Of course, I knew it, many of us knew it, a long time ago, but, very clearly that it was an apartheid state from the get-go. There is no scenario that state is going to allow a Palestinian entity full independence anywhere, number one. Number two, what they have done throughout Palestine cannot be undone.
Listen to what's really going on.
Palestinian territories. There I witnessed Israel directly extracting fossil fuels out from under Palestinian land. Despite your regular condemnations of Israel's disregard for international law, the EU has rewarded Israel with a multi-million euro gas deal. And my question to you, Mr. Borrell, is why is one occupier's oil and gas more acceptable than another's?
Exactly.